welcome back to Cosmic Comics. These issues eventually uncover the truth behind the mysterious Dr. Lawson and focus on the ever-changing interpersonal relationships between Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, and Medic Una. In Captain Marvel Volume 1, Issue Number 4, Marvel and Namor face off. The issue begins with a few panels of Marvel self-reflecting on his mission and what it means to be a Kree soldier. The reader can tell from the papers on the nightstand that Captain Marvel is now a known public figure thanks to his saving Cape Canaveral from both the Kree Sentry and Super Skrull. Now that the people of Earth are looking up to Marvel, he's having a hard time remaining objective towards his subjects. He's afraid that spending time among them, he's developed an alien and earthly emotion known as a conscience. We learned in the Untold legend of Captain Marvel that Marvel has a long history of valuing Kree life over the military mission objective and has been reprimanded repeatedly for such discretions in the past. It was on a mission into Brood-occupied space that Marvel and Una first discussed how the way they value life makes them different from the rest of their fellow Kree. Marvel pulls himself out of this train of thought by reminding himself out loud who he is, a loyal Kree soldier. Then he kind of snaps and breaks into a violent outburst. Wouldn't you know it, this is the moment that somebody decides to come knocking at his door. For whatever reason, Marvel hasn't changed back into his human clothes yet and is forced to pull on a robe to cover his uniform. As he's pulling on the robe, we learn that between issues, Marvel removed the name C. Marvel from the hotel registration from when he first signed in. The person at the door is Hal, who is filling in for night clerk Jeremy Logan, who was injured during the battle with Super Skrull. Hal tells Marvel that Mr. Logan is in a coma and that nobody knows what happened to him. We learn that Hal's last name is also Logan, and as he walks away, just like Jeremy Logan and Carol Danvers, Hal can't shake the feeling that Dr. Lawson is hiding something. As Marvel leaves, he once again reflects on his fear that Mr. Logan might have information that'll blow his cover. As he gets in a cab outside, we run into what has now become a regular character, cab driver Chester Fenton, who remembers dropping Marvel off half a mile from the missile base on their last trip together. Marvel once again uses the excuse of needing some exercise for his actions on the previous evening. Here we run into a slight problem with consistency within the narrative, and I know I'm nitpicking here. In the previous issue, we were told that the base had roadblocks set up 1 mile out from the base, so one would assume that Marvel was dropped off further than 1 mile out. As the cabbie slows down to drop Marvel off in the same spot as before, we see a giant sign that says Missile Base half a mile, with the driver letting us know that this is indeed the same spot he dropped Marvel off at last time. Where exactly is that cab driving off to in this panel anyway? There doesn't appear to be much road. But anyways, moving on. Back at the missile base, General Bridges and Carol Danvers are awaiting the arrival of Doc Lawson. Miss Danvers, head of security for the Cape, still isn't convinced that Dr. Lawson should have been given security clearance. We're not told why she's still not convinced, because their conversation is interrupted by the final countdown of a secret missile launch. The launch is diverted by Yon-Rogg in an effort to infect New York City with various deadly bacteria and viruses and study the results. The missile landing in the ocean causes a conflict between Namor and Captain Marvel and the destruction of the missile. At one point in the battle, Marvel has the opportunity to kill Namor, but opts to blind him instead. Each appearance of Captain Marvel up to this point was written at least in part by Roy Thomas, but issue number 5 switches writers over to Arnold Drake. This issue begins with Yon-Rogg asking Ronan the Accuser to judge Marvel for his actions in the previous issue. Yon-Rogg is accusing Marvel of taking pity upon their enemy by allowing the Submariner to survive their battle. For the second time, Yon-Rogg calls Marvel a traitor to his own kind. During the trial, Yon-Rogg sets a trap for Una by asking her to testify against Marvel. Una takes the bait and gives an emotional response that brings her to tears. This is exactly what Yon-Rogg wanted, because now he can convince Ronan to dismiss her as an impartial witness. Marvel and Una attempt to find solace in one another, but Yon-Rogg has them separated. This causes an emotional outburst from Marvel. Neither him nor Una are doing a good job of keeping a lid on their emotions. Yon-Rogg wraps up his charges against Marvel by accusing him of being un-Kree. Yon-Rogg doesn't get the response he's looking for at all. Ronan tells him that although much of what Marvel does is cause for anger and concern, his loyalty and distinguished military record give them pause to hand out sentence for such a crime. Instead of deciding Marvel's fate then and there, Ronan's judgment is to let Marvel's future actions decide his fate. Marvel, out of concern for the mission, brings up the situation with Mr. Logan, who is currently in a coma and may know Marvel is an alien. Ronan charges that Marvel must kill Mr. Logan before he wakes up. You can tell Marvel isn't too keen on that idea and suggests using their mind eraser instead to minimize any attention his death might bring. Man, where does he get all these wonderful toys? Thus, the second time Yon-Rogg calls Marvel a traitor also ends in failure. Once Marvel returns to the base, he's in for another round of questioning, only this time it's at the hands of Carol Danvers instead of Yon-Rogg. Carol is upset that Marvel's personnel file doesn't have any pictures in it. Dr. Lawson insists that it's because he's a missile specialist and not a movie star. The real reason, of course, is that Marvel destroyed all the pictures of Dr. Lawson. Carol Danvers doesn't like Dr. Lawson's jokes or his tone. Dr. Lawson starts playing dirty. He pulls the gender card in the worst of ways. He tells Carol that she's a lovely woman who has been given a very masculine role. Naturally, psychological conflicts must arise when a beautiful young woman is asked to play policeman. Dr. Lawson leaves, but not before Carol lets him know that this isn't finished. Doc Lawson leaves the base, and his favorite cabbie, Chester, picks him up. From there, he goes by the local hospital to check on night clerk Jeremy Logan. Marvel is capable of getting the memory eraser attached to Mr. Logan, but before he can complete the mission given to him by Ronan and erase Mr. Logan's memory, Captain Marvel is attacked by the Metazoid. After a prolonged battle, Marvel eventually wins by hitting the Metazoid with a blast of X-rays, which seemingly kills the beast. Marvel returns to Mr. Logan's room, where he removes the memory eraser. As he flees the scene, he is caught messing around by Mr. Logan's bedside by two hospital workers. As Marvel rockets away, one of the two workers notes that the patient seems to be improving and is beginning to wake up from his coma. Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Issue Number 6, finds Marvel returning to Earth after having completed some training aboard the starship Helion. Right after dropping Marvel off, the Helion is forced to land for repairs due to a downed engine. In order to land the ship, they will be forced to temporarily turn off the aura of negativism that keeps them cloaked from skyward eyes and probing scans. As the ship comes in for a landing, we're shown Carol Danvers returning to the base and still fretting about not getting all the info she needs to approve Dr. Lawson's security clearance. In the brief moment the Kree ship is visible in the sky, Carol Danvers sees it and takes her eyes off the road to get a better look. In that moment, she nearly runs down her colleague, Dr. Lawson, who is forced to leap out of the way. Carol gets out of her car to see if the person she nearly ran down is all right. I don't think either Carol or Walter are happy to see the other. Carol apologizes for her distracted driving and tries to tell Dr. Lawson about the rocket-powered ship she just saw pass overhead. Once again, Doc Lawson is probably meaner than needed towards Miss Danvers. He tells her that it was probably just the strain of her having such a big job. The ship lands, and in the process it kicks up a large amount of wind from the displacement of air during the landing. The gust is strong enough that a startled Miss Danvers leaps towards Dr. Lawson, who tries to pass off the sudden gust as a localized weather event. Carol apologizes for her skittish behavior, and Marvel continues to be cringy by letting her know he prefers her female side over her policeman side. Yon-Rogg and the crew have finished their repairs, turn on the ore of negativism once more, and take back off into low Earth orbit. A second huge gust of wind and a bright flash of light on the horizon leads Carol to investigate its source, while Dr. Lawson continues to insist that the phenomena is related to the weather. At that moment, our heroes happen upon the ship's blast site, where there are 3 large burn marks on the ground. Carol thinks that they have finally found the proof they need, but Dr. Lawson tries to mislead her once again by insisting that they could have been made by anybody at any time. Before she can press the conversation any further, Lawson insists that he's not going to entertain the idea of flying saucer talk and walks away from the situation. Back at the missile base, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Dr. Norman Lundquist is prepared to test out the new laser that will draw its power from the sun. Marvel is concerned that the full ramifications of the project haven't been thought through. This is reinforced when Dr. Lundquist admits that the project was rushed when Dr. Lawson asks about any potential danger from the project. When Dr. Lawson voices his concerns, Dr. Lundquist angrily tells Dr. Lawson not to question his scientific judgment, morality, or authority. Yon-Rogg isn't happy about Marvel's interference, as it's his belief that as part of the mission, they should be allowing the people of Earth to make mistakes as part of their observation. To remind Marvel to allow Earthlings to progress at their own pace, Yon-Rogg sends a sharp jolt of pain through Marvel's wrist monitoring device. It's an interesting development to see that Marvel is afraid that he could be killed by a second blast to the wrist. So the wrist monitor is more powerful than I would have initially thought if it's capable of killing Marvel. Dr. Lundquist and Dr. Lawson meet up with General Bridges and Carol Danvers for the weapons test. Once they arrive, Dr. Lundquist immediately calls out Dr. Lawson in front of the General and Carol for attempting to talk him out of the test. Carol sees this as an opportunity to get in a dig as well and wants to know what Dr. Lawson was doing out in the woods outside of the base all alone last night. His sly remark is that he was watching over young security officers who run their cars off the road while looking at flying saucers. The General demands answers as to what is going on. Carol reports her sighting of the craft in the air and the evidence she found on the ground, but Dr. Lawson insists that he saw nothing he hasn't seen before. This is a sly bending of the truth. The real Dr. Lawson might not have ever seen anything like it, but Captain Marvel surely has. Carol leaves once more, determined to discover the truth about Dr. Lawson. The test goes wrong and creates a creature called Solemn, the same name as the weapon system. Solemn is a kinetic being of energy, converted into a living creature. Marvel reflects on when the Kree first ran across these creatures from conducting similar experiments in Star System 127-B. Marvel brawls with the creature for a bit before coming up with a plan to finish him off. They need to fill him up with enough energy to make him grow fast enough to collapse back in upon himself. To get this much energy in one place, Captain Marvel creates the Internet. Yep, that's right. General Bridges gets on the phone and insists they need a 4-way video hookup between the central computers at Carnegie Tech, Caltech, and MIT with direct data intercommunications between them all. That sounds like the Internet to me. Marvel uses his advanced mathematical ability to get the computer systems fed into the solar laser. When the moment is right, he strikes the beast, causing it to grow, and then eventually collapse. The people of Earth cheer our hero's good deed. After saving the day, Marvel returns to the Helion. We learn that before he arrives, Yon-Rogg has contacted Ronan the Accuser to report that Marvel has countermanded his order once again by helping the people of Earth defeat Solemn. In the final panel, we see that Quasimodo is aware of the immense gathering of computer energy and is looking to take advantage of it. Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Issue Number 7, begins with Marvel about to be interrogated. He's being held in a truth chair by Ronan the Accuser. Captain Marvel will have to prove his loyalty to the Kree. Yon-Rogg has the pleasure of questioning Marvel. Basically, his charge is that in the previous issue, Marvel was told to observe the people of Earth, and when their experimentation led to the creation of an aggressive energy being, instead of simply observing, Marvel actively engaged in combat with the creature. Yon-Rogg charges that Marvel betrayed the Kree people so that he might continue his celebrity as a hero of Earth. Marvel says Yon-Rogg has got it all wrong. Ronan steps in and insists that Yon-Rogg doesn't know how to ask the right questions in order to get the greatest effectiveness from the truth chair, and insists on taking over the interrogation. Ronan's questioning begins. He wants to know why Marvel disobeyed a direct order. Marvel doesn't give the best of answers in my book, but we know he's telling the truth. I mean, he's in the truth chair, right? His reasoning is that the destruction of the base jeopardized both his cover and his primary mission of studying Earth development. But is Marvel telling the truth? Or could it be that he is beginning to self-identify as the hero of Earth as charged? I ask this because the truth chair is only 95% accurate, and Marvel's readouts lie within the 5% zone of indecision the chair can't rule upon. Yon-Rogg points out that if the chair is undecided, then Kree law demands that Ronan judge, and if necessary, pass sentence. Ronan comes up with a great way to test Marvel's allegiance by demanding that he release Virus-Z-3 on any Earth community of his choice in order to see if the people of Earth have a natural immunity. We learn from Yon-Rogg that this virus almost wiped out the Kree home planet until they developed an immunity. We're even told in the corner box that this is an excellent example of the dehumanized advanced mind of the Kree. We're then shown some pretty powerful Kree tech. Ronan uses a technology called the Beta Ray, which uses the Kree science of bionics to transfer Marvel and Yon-Rogg at 5 times the speed of light from their current location to a bionic receiver on the starship Helion. We see Yon-Rogg glaring once more at Marvel and Una sharing an intimate moment, this time calling Marvel a lovesick cow, although we know Yon-Rogg really wants to be the one in Una's arms. What is it about this woman that Kree men are willing to lay down their careers in order to win her affection? Case in point, in the next panel, Marvel has told Una about his upcoming mission, and instead of being supportive and understanding that this is what he has to do as a Kree soldier, her response is to tell him that he would never complete such a mission. Yon-Rogg, still watching, shares her sentiment. Both his girl and his commanding officer don't think that Marvel has what it takes to be a Kree soldier. Ouch, man, what a burn. As Marvel returns to Earth, Carol Danvers returns to the scene of where the Kree starship had to land for engine repairs. Her investigative efforts don't go unnoticed. Yon-Rogg is monitoring the area. Her persistence in investigating the Kree starship has the potential to interfere with the Kree mission, and therefore Yon-Rogg decides it is in their best interest to eliminate Carol Danvers. In another surprising technological development, we learn that the Kree are capable of harnessing cosmic energy in their starships to use as a weapon, but it takes a moment to charge up. And oh yeah, this is happening. He fires a blast at Carol, who is frozen in fear, and wouldn't you know, Once more, at the last possible moment, Captain Marvel dives in and saves her life with a blast of his unibeam. After having her life spared, Carol looks up to see a figure emerging from the cosmic mist. When she sees that it's Captain Marvel, she leaps into his arms, expressing her joy that it wasn't some alien. Oh, girl, if you only knew. In the next couple of panels, she expresses her concern about Dr. Lawson, and Marvel tells her to call the authorities, and she lets him know that she already has, but there just isn't enough information to pin anything down. She also lets slip that the FBI has sent over a copy of Dr. Lawson's fingerprints. This could pose a problem. She goes on to ask for Marvel's help in her investigation, thinking that his powers might lend themselves to some easy answers, but Marvel insists that she stick with professional policemen. Back on the Helios, Yon-Rogg calls Una over to the visioscope to watch the scene unfolding on the planet below. As Una approaches, she knows that he is selectively choosing to show her something in order to create a wedge between herself and Marvel. Once we switch back to the surface below, we see that Miss Danvers has gone as far as to show Marvel the info she's received on Dr. Lawson. While looking at the card with the fingerprints, Marvel seemingly drops it by accident, and then, while picking it back up, hits the card with a small blast from his unibeam. We can no longer deny that this whole bit is starting to have a bit of a Lois Lane / Clark Kent vibe to it. It continues with Marvel acting like the hero and telling Miss Danvers he will start to look into Dr. Lawson, while at the same time Carol places her hand on his chest and expresses the endless trust she has in Marvel. The irony of this situation isn't lost on Captain Marvel. Back on the ship, Yon-Rogg is getting salty by pointing out how close Marvel and Danvers are getting to one another. Una takes it all in stride, pointing out that Marvel is merely doing his job. Yon-Rogg agrees, but wonders if Marvel need have so much enthusiasm beyond what is required by duty. He pushes the seeds of doubt further by mentioning that this is why he wonders if Marvel has the ability to withstand the emotional involvement of Earth people. Once we're shown Una's inner monologue, we know that Yon-Rogg's efforts to shake her has worked. Una knows what he's doing is for his job, but still notes that the insecurity of her own heart is her most vulnerable point, and she calls it a woman's weakness. Marvel, now dressed as Dr. Lawson, returns to the hotel where we see night clerk Jeremy Logan for the first time since his release from the hospital. Dr. Lawson notes that Mr. Logan is looking good, and Mr. Logan mentions that he feels great, but for some reason he can't remember anything prior to landing in the hospital. This effectively wraps up the long and drawn-out saga of night clerk Jeremy Logan. Once Marvel gets back to his room, he pulls out even more crazy Kree technology. This is called the cell transmuter, and Marvel uses it to make his fingerprints match those of Dr. Lawson's. While he's taking care of his fingers, Quasimodo has arrived and left a path of destruction on the Cape in his search for computer power. Marvel and Quasimodo have a battle in which Marvel pretends to lose so that he can follow Quasimodo and learn more about his plan. Back on the starship, Yon-Rogg is attempting to follow Marvel's progress, but the Visio monitor has gone down. The repair tech notes that it looks like somebody deliberately sabotaged it. And holy smokes, it was Una! Marvel isn't the troublesome rebel, it's Una! She did it to protect Marvel, but we can see how deep Yon-Rogg's words have gotten to her because she questions if putting herself on the line for love is worth the risk. She asks, why am I saving him so that he can fly to the Earth Woman's arms? Marvel follows Quasimodo and ends up, and I kid you not, in Gay 90s Town. Yep, that's right. They called it Gay 90s Town. A town filled with reenactment robots who are dressed in garb from the 1890s. I was gonna say it's like Westworld without the bloodshed, but the people start attacking Marvel with rays from their mouths and eyes, and Marvel quickly figures out that this is a town of robot mannequins. Captain Marvel follows the largest energy signature, which leads him to the control center. Quasimodo is there. Marvel warns Quasimodo to exit the power station before demolishing it in a single blow. Afterwards, Marvel finds himself surrounded by bodies of the robot mannequins who have collapsed now that they are no longer receiving any power. Marvel uses this as the perfect opportunity to make it appear as though he wiped out an entire town using Virus-Z-3. Yon-Rogg is justifiably upset that he didn't get to see everything that took place. I will point out that in this case, both Una and Marvel committed traitorous acts that could have gotten them killed within Kree society. Una points out that if Yon-Rogg continues to attack everything Marvel does, that it's going to start raising questions about Yon-Rogg's motivations. Here we get perhaps the most tender glance at the character of Una we ever see in the pages of Marvel. Is it me, or does she almost always look like she's crying? She reflects on the hard balance she and Marvel must maintain. In his duty, he faces both court-martial and death, while at the same time she is afraid that each day he succeeds drives him further into the arms of Carol Danvers. The issue ends with Marvel once more reflecting on how he can maintain his dual identity. Captain Marvel, issue number 8, opens on the captain's deck of an Akon trading vessel. This is the first appearance of this race within the pages of Marvel. Engine trouble has them looking for somewhere to land where they can work on their ship. One problem: the only planet nearby has a small force of their mortal enemies present, the Kree. It's not set out right, but it definitely appears as though the Akon have a way to detect the Kree starship, even though it is protected by its aura of negativism. As the Akon approach the planet, they attempt to use the moon to shield their presence from the Kree ship, but it's too late. Yon-Rogg has already spotted the enemy and announces preparations to attack the trading vessel. Captain Marvel objects on the grounds that an attack might endanger their mission on Earth, but Yon-Rogg won't hear of it. Yon-Rogg continues to try and insult Marvel by asking if he wants to remain behind to look after the women and children, and then egging him on further as they prepare to charge into battle. In the middle of the fray, it is Marvel who dispatches of the Akon commander. Yon-Rogg has to admit that Marvel's fighting prowess helps, but notes that as long as this mission is under his command, he will receive all of the credit for its success. We know this is true based on the events of the Untold Legend of Captain Marvel 3-issue miniseries, where Captain Marvel saved the day, but Yon-Rogg was given all of the credit for the mission's success due to his being the commanding officer. After a brutal melee combat, the Akon are prepared to give up and request discussing the terms of their surrender. Colonel Yon-Rogg informs them there will be no terms, only death. Yon-Rogg tells one of his officers, Tir-Zar, to fetch him some nuclear rocket launcher, but Tir-Zar insists that they need a written order before dispatching nukes. Yon-Rogg informs his subordinate that he will get his written order, but to go ahead and fetch the weapons. Captain Marvel is upset, seemingly more about losing out on the progress with his Earth mission more than any concerns for the lives being lost around him. As one of the soldiers readies the nuclear device, Marvel informs him that a single nuke explosion would give them away to the people of Earth. Captain Marvel then insists that if Yon-Rogg goes forward with his order to use nukes, then he will resign as second in command. Fortunately, Marvel doesn't have to follow through on this threat, because at that moment, Yon-Rogg is struck by a blast from their enemies. With the Kree commander down, the Akon press the attack, and Marvel gives a great heroic line. One fallen Kree is but a signal for all to rise and smite the enemy. The Kree get a handle on the situation by adopting a defensive position and forming a wall to protect Marvel as he carries Yon-Rogg off the field of battle. The Akon are forced back to their ship and both parties disengage from combat. The Akons because they have been gravely wounded and the Kree because their commanding officer is in need of medical attention. Once aboard the Helion, Una begins scanning Yon-Rogg and attempting to bring him back to full health. With Yon-Rogg incapacitated, this leaves Marvel in command of the mission. Instead of using the situation to his advantage, he chooses to focus on his primary mission. He hands command of the ship over to Tirzar while Marvel prepares to return to Earth. In the next couple of panels, a new mystery begins to unfold itself, and Captain Marvel sounds more like Carol Danvers. Marvel has decided to look into Dr. Lawson's past in order to shore up his secret identity. What he finds is surprising. Professor Walter Lawson has a huge home, much bigger than anything he should be capable of affording based off of his salaried position. The inside is equally exquisite, with lots of expensive art and furniture. Marvel's eye is drawn to one piece in particular, a sculpture of a double helix DNA strand. Marvel notes that 2 of the atoms on the sculpture are out of place and decides to correct Dr. Lawson's carelessness. Once he puts the pieces into place, a wall panel is activated, leading to a giant corridor which is carved into the mountain behind Dr. Lawson's house. Marvel doesn't have to go far before the mystery deepens once again. Inside, Marvel discovers a massive research laboratory which indicates an in-depth knowledge of servo mechanisms and self-commanding devices. We're shown a mold for a giant robot. But what are they using to program the robot the real Dr. Lawson made? Cards! Cards! See, kids, it used to be that for computers to work, we couldn't write the program into the computers, so instead they used a series of punch cards which served to carry out the machine's programming. Marvel is going to take the cards back to the Cape and figure out what the machine was programmed for. Marvel's timing on looking into Dr. Lawson's past couldn't have been more coincidental, because while he's there, 2 gentlemen with guns show up demanding to see Dr. Lawson. They barge into the lab like they own the place. Because they do. They, are more likely their boss, has sunk $12 million into the lab and have shown up to collect the results. They're looking for the robot they call Big Boy. We know these guys have access to advanced technology because video conferencing wasn't readily available in 1968. The person they are calling back to is known simply as Number 1, who heads up a secretive group named the Organization. He goes on to tell us that they have paid lots of money for Dr. Lawson to build them a robot assassin. Their brilliant plan is to have a robot kill people because when the police investigate it, it wouldn't be capable of telling the police any information because of its limited programming. If this is a plan that works so well, then why not just buy a gun? Guns don't talk. But guns are traceable, and a giant robot totally wouldn't be traceable. Number 1 is afraid that Dr. Lawson might be planning to use the robot against members of the organization. It's at that moment that he notices Captain Marvel hiding within the room and warns his friends, who waste no time in opening fire. The guns hit a giant cathode ray tube, causing an explosion. Marvel dives out of the way, only to find one of the criminals prepared to strike him with the butt of his rifle. From their words, it's apparent that these 2 are going to kill Marvel with the second strike. Marvel's U-beam saves the day once more, as he avoids the blow by destroying the weapons with a well-placed shot. Marvel then uses his increased strength and speed to show his aggressors how hard a Kree soldier can punch in reduced gravity. Over the next few panels, we learn the names of the two guys attacking Marvel, Danny and Mort. A crack shot by Danny helps Mort escape. While fleeing, Mort drops a couple of baby grenades behind him. The grenades are enough to seal off the exit, but not enough to slow Marvel down, who uses his U-beam to escape. The villains open fire as Marvel closes in behind them. I think it's great that they take a panel to address how hard it is to shoot a moving target from a moving vehicle while driving down a rock road. Marvel is determined to catch up, knowing that these men have the answers he seeks in relation to Dr. Lawson and his involvement with the organization. Awesome panel here as our villains once again deal with the realities of an escaping superhero while driving down a gravel road. One of them shifts the car into overdrive, while the other points out that they are already doing 108 on a rock road. They can't control the car as they careen around a corner, and the car flies off the edge. Marvel thinks to himself that this was no loss for the human race, but it closes another door to the mystery of Walter Lawson. He resolves himself to check the computer cards he gathered earlier. Today's failure has number 1 enraged. He's afraid that Captain Marvel might know about their secret robot and wants to recover it for himself. He commands the entirety of the organization to kill Captain Marvel. Previously, Captain Marvel had told Carol Danvers he would continue to look into Dr. Lawson, and it appears as though he kept to his word. I'm not entirely certain of his motivation here, but he informs Carol about the lab he found at Dr. Lawson's home and tells her he believes that somebody else is paying him for independent research. Captain Marvel, oddly, doesn't reveal the source of the funding to Carol, who asks him to continue looking into the matter. She goes on to say, and I quote, "I don't know who or what you are, but I do know that I need your help. Desperately." Marvel, all business, responds, "I won't desert you, Miss Danvers." And, oh yeah, she tells him to call her Carol and dives in to plant a wet kiss on Marvel. Meanwhile, back on the Helion, Yon-Rogg has had the Visio screen repaired and once more has Una watching Marvel's interactions with Carol Danvers. This time, he notes that Marvel, who is assigned to learn all of Earth's culture, has decided to investigate their romantic customs. It appears as though the wedge Yon-Rogg has been driving between Una and Marvel has finally reached a turning point. As Una watches, she admits to herself that she knew it would come to this. Back at the Cape, Dr. Lawson is busy feeding his computer cards into the Cape's computers. From this, he learns that the robot was sent on a test run and was instructed to hunt down and kill Dr. Lawson. Now, this raises some huge red flags. Why would Dr. Lawson want to kill himself? The deeper we dive, the weirder it gets. Thanks to the serendipitous timing of comic books, the robot in question is smashing through a building on its way to the place where the real Dr. Lawson's plane crashed. This also raises so many questions. Where has this robot been for the last couple of weeks? Has he been on his way to the Cape this entire time? Has he been walking like in a straight line, just smashing houses and other buildings along the way? If so, it seems like he might have garnered just a little bit of attention by now. The robot finds the remains of Dr. Lawson's crashed plane and decides to search the area. General Bridges is attempting to make his way to the officers' club for a relaxing night, but is stopped along the way by the sight of the giant robot. Remember, this is like 4 or 5 giant robots or creatures to come at the base now in just a matter of weeks or less. The timeline at this point is a little hazy, but I definitely wouldn't put it at anything longer than a month since Marvel's battle with Sentry number 459. Things escalate quickly with the robot grabbing the front of the General's Jeep while his driver attempts to fire a gun to no avail. Dr. Lawson is on his way back to the base, once again in a cab driven by Chester, who is stopped short of the base due to the scene before him. Chester suggests that they get out of there, but the robot hears him refer to his passenger as Dr. Lawson. We can also see that the robot has grabbed the General. In the next panel, the General is telling Lawson to run for his life. Dr. Lawson does just that, all the while thinking to himself that he needs to get away just long enough to turn into Captain Marvel. Lawson dives into some thicket and works on circling around to the robot's other side. In the meantime, the robot tears through the plant, attempting to find Dr. Lawson. It's at that moment that Captain Marvel enters the scene ready to attack. The robot doesn't seem impressed and boasts to have Marvel dead within minutes. Marvel and the robot go round after round, with the robot never relenting its attack for a single second. Then it happens. Marvel is captured in the grip of the beast. Back on the Helion, Una appears to be crying once more. She asks Yon-Rogg to have their gunners take out the robot, but Yon-Rogg refuses, noting that it would interfere with Marvel's mission. Of course, Yon-Rogg just wants Marvel dead and Una in his bed. I seriously think he's checking her out in this panel. Back on Earth, Marvel is struggling against the robot. I have to say I have a hard time believing that the same Captain Marvel who took out a Kree sentry is having such a hard time with a regular Earth robot. What makes this thing so tough? Marvel is being crushed to death and knows he needs to escape. He goes for what has become his first line of defense in nearly every battle. He uses his U-beam to blind his enemy, and wouldn't you know it, it doesn't work. You can't beat a robot by shining a really bright light at him. In fact, his eyes are invulnerable to such a blast and automatically protect themselves. Marvel is seconds away from death and knows a full blast of his unibeam won't save him, so he attempts a barrage of smaller blasts instead. It's unclear if this actually works or if the robot simply decides to fling Marvel to his death. Either way, Marvel is free, but heading towards the ground at an accelerated rate. In order to survive the attack, it takes a combination of Marvel's superb physical conditioning, low relative gravity, and his mini-rockets. At long last, Marvel gets a window to attack. In the crux of the battle, we're given this panel where Carol Danvers shows up and asks what's going on. I'm going to stop and cover it just for the general weirdness of it. The General informs her that Captain Marvel is fighting an advanced robot and that if he can't stop it, then the rest of them are as good as dead. Another soldier jumps in and insists that if Marvel can't win, then the entire world is in trouble. A third soldier looking on says that he likes a guy who comes to the point. Marvel presses his attack on the robot, staying out of the contraption's reach while we make a number of targeted direct attacks aimed at softening his opponent up. The repeated attacks begin to have their effects until finally the U-beam takes its toll on the beast. The final and perhaps greatest work of the former real Dr. Lawson collapses into a cacophony of rending steel, skin, and chattering gears. Carol Danvers is more than happy to approach Marvel and place her hands on his chest. She lets Marvel know that she's happy he stopped Dr. Lawson's scheme. The General demands to know what they are talking about and where Dr. Lawson has run off to. Marvel lets him know that Dr. Lawson was seen running down the highway away from the robot's attack. He even goes as far as to crack a joke by stating that robot fighting is not one of the Doctor's specialties. This attempted humor might go unnoticed by the people of Earth, but crying medic Una sees it as yet another sign that Marvel is drifting closer to Carol and further from herself. As the issue closes out, once again the General asks Carol what she was discussing with Captain Marvel when he walked up, and once again she dodges the question. In the final panel of the issue, we learn that Dr. Lawson pretty much built the human version of a Kree sentry. Both are self-healing and adamantly follow their programming. The robot assassin lets us know that its central nervous system circuits are still operational, and thus it begins the process of self-repair with the eventual goal of completing its programming and killing Dr. Lawson. Captain Marvel, Volume 1, Issue Number 9, if it isn't evident enough by the cover, deals with the return of the Akon. And hold on one second, do my eyes deceive me? Or is there something wrong with this picture? Yes, the Akon have the wrong skin color on the cover. They should be yellow. On the opening page, we see Captain Marvel under attack by 3 Akon, each on a round machine that allows them to skim through the air. The Akon are here to extract their revenge on the Kree who killed their captain. Marvel in his head thinks back on the matter and recalls having to blast the commander to save Yon-Rogg's neck. No offense, but I got at least one panel shot of that action, and that doesn't appear to be how things went down, but maybe I should take Captain Marvel's word for it that there's more to the story. Marvel wants to end the battle with the Akon before local authorities begin investigating. He's worried that the battle might endanger the mission. I'm not sure what Marvel is afraid of at this point. He's become a known regular around the Cape over the last few months, mostly for fighting giant robots and space aliens. To top it all off, he's been featured in the local papers numerous times for his heroics. My point is, saying that battles with space aliens and giants are going to ruin your Earth mission is getting a little old. In fact, with the number of disturbances taking place, I'm surprised that somebody like the Avengers haven't popped in to investigate. They must be busy with more pressing issues at the moment. Marvel snaps into battle mode and knocks the first of the 3 Akon from his disc. The battle surges back and forth, but Marvel knows he's nearing the moment of defeating his attackers. Marvel hears the sounds of sirens and knows that the local police have been sent out to investigate. So, this is interesting. The area the police are closing in on is called Logan Woods. The 2 night clerks from the hotel at the Cape earlier in the series were Jeremy Logan and Hal Logan. Okay, maybe it's not that interesting. Instead of finishing the battle, Marvel decides to flee with the help of a smoke grenade. Back at the hotel where Marvel has been masquerading as Dr. Lawson, Carol Danvers is taking on her first acting role. She walks in and pretends to be Dr. Lawson's assistant, needing to retrieve something from his room. Behind the desk is night clerk Jeremy Logan. He's always seemed on the up and up to me, in the sense that he might have done a bad thing by searching Marvel's room before, but he meant well. Him and Carol don't exactly hit it off, but she's capable of greasing his palm to turn over a used key to Marvel's room for the low price of $10. Yet he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would do that. Carol is here to try and finally get to the bottom of the mystery that is Dr. Lawson. She admits in her inner dialogue that she has crossed a line here, and even her job as head of security at the Cape won't save her from a breaking and entering charge. She hears a sound coming from outside. She's afraid it might be Dr. Lawson returning. She's shocked to see a giant eye looking in the window at her. The robot assassin has finished healing and tracked Dr. Lawson back to his hotel room using its chemosensors. As a crime of opportunity, it then decides to take Carol Danvers captive to use as bait. A short time later, Marvel and his trusty cabbie Chester pull up to his hotel. Chester wants to avoid the cops and takes off. Marvel arrives to find his room trashed and police investigating. They tell him that the night clerk says that the large hole in the wall was caused by a giant robot. Marvel tries to throw the police off the robot's trail by insinuating that Mr. Logan was drunk. He bases this on his observation that no robot that big or sophisticated exists. This is preposterous to propose, as there are pictures in the paper of Captain Marvel fighting Kree Sentry number 459, who appeared to me to be even larger. Unfortunately for Marvel, the detectives are here to detect. They want to know what the robot was after, and they're sure that Dr. Lawson has the answers. We know more than anything Dr. Lawson wants to leave so he can change into Captain Marvel and go back to fighting giant robots and aliens again. Switching over to Carol Danvers, we can see that her life doesn't appear to be in any immediate danger, and that the robot has brought her back to Dr. Lawson's residence, or more specifically, his research lab. Carol wants to know who programmed the robot, but it tells her that all it knows is its programming, and that its programming is to kill Dr. Lawson, and that she is the bait. Carol hopes that Marvel will show up to save her. After a period of hours, Dr. Lawson is released from questioning. He's ready to get back to locating the robot and what he refers to as the Danvers woman. I think that this is very important, as we see from Marvel's inner dialogue that he doesn't refer to her with any affection. In fact, his desire to save her comes from a feeling of personal responsibility that his taking over of Dr. Lawson's life in some measure led to Carol's current predicament, and he feels it's his job to proverbially clean up his own mess. Wouldn't you know, Colonel Yon-Rogg is standing by at his Visio screen, prepared to show Una how rescuing Carol is Marvel's top priority. Una seems resolute that Marvel is only doing his job, but she soon breaks down to tears once more as she continues to fight the battle between doing her job and following her heart. Yon-Rogg notices that the Akon scouting team are still searching for Marvel, so he decides to help them out by sending a signal to Marvel's wrist monitor, which the Akon will be capable of tracking. A couple of quick, painful bursts to Marvel's wrist allows the Akon to do just that. While the Akon close in, Marvel locates the robot, who is expecting Dr. Lawson. Marvel offers to be his stand-in. How convenient. And Carol Danvers is ecstatic to see him. The fight begins. To start out with, the robot brags that he has beams built into his hands that can burn steel at 1/4 of a mile, and Marvel reassures the robot that he won't underestimate him now that he knows that the robot can heal itself. The robot begins shooting missiles at Marvel, who attempts to respond with a sustained burst from his unibeam. As Marvel's continuous attacks begin to show results, he's hit by one of the many missiles, and the robot prepares to kill Marvel off. Marvel attempts to get Carol to flee, but she refuses to leave his side. In the next panel, we learn that Marvel thinks it is touching that so many Earthlings value loyalty even under the worst of circumstances. Marvel attacks the robot and issues a challenge in hopes of leading it away from Carol Danvers. And wouldn't you know it, the Akon scouts have tracked Marvel down. We all saw this coming, right? Marvel turns and decides to show down against the robot first, and is surprised when it allows him to fly right past it. He was lucky the robot is distracted by the Akon shots that hit it instead of their intended target. Marvel uses this window to take Miss Danvers to safety. Note that he keeps things professional by calling her by her last name instead of Carol. Conveniently, the robot thinks that the Akon are there to keep him from Dr. Lawson, and the Akon think the robot is a Kree minion protecting Captain Marvel. The Akon attack Cyber-X, Lord of Automatons. What? I didn't know about that title. Okay, a combined attack from the Akon causes Cyberx to temporarily collapse, and they then turn their attentions back toward Marvel. Marvel and Carol have escaped into a small cave behind Dr. Lawson's lab. Carol insists that after the battle is over, that they are going to get to the bottom of whatever is going on with Dr. Lawson. Marvel leaves to rejoin the battle. Once they spot him, the Akon pull back in order to push a synchronized full-on attack. Marvel's enhanced jet boots save his hide once more as he shoots down several more Akon. One almost closes in on Marvel, but he's fast enough to stop him. Then Carol chimes in. Maybe she distracted Marvel, maybe not, we'll never know. But as soon as she starts singing his praises for routing the enemy, Marvel takes a shot to the back. The Akon close in and celebrate their downed foe, and upon searching his person, discover that he carries a copy of Code Z-19. We're then informed that this is the Imperial War Code of the Kree, which the Akon have sought for over 100 years. Supposedly, it holds the Kree's greatest secret and the key to their destruction. Basically, it's a cipher to decrypt the Kree's most top-secret orders. Anybody else think that all this sounds maybe a little too good to be true? The bottom portion of this page is quite a swing. We go from Carol, who thinks that Marvel may be dead, to the Akon, who are ready to flee with their prize. And finally, the reawakening of Cyberx, whose sensors pick up the presence of Dr. Lawson on the Kree pamphlet. He assumes that everybody present is in cahoots with Dr. Lawson, and he wants to kill them all, as per his programming or something like that. The Akon attempt to flee, but Cyberx wipes the floor with him. As he clears the Akon out of the way, he discovers Captain Marvel firing on him once more. Marvel shoots his U-beam at Cyberx, while at the same time Cyberx unleashes his searing salvo. The two beams meet midair and clash. Slowly, Marvel's Kree technology inches towards Cyberx until the robot's ray is defeated. Even without a head, Cyberx continues to try and repair itself. Marvel lands at least one extra blast to help ensure that doesn't happen again. As for the booklet the Akon and Cyberx were after, it's nothing more than Dr. Lawson's old personal address book, and Captain Marvel had printed Legend Code Z-19 on the cover in Kree. As Marvel attempts to leave the scene, Carol Danvers calls him back. As Medic Una attempts to return to her room, Captain Yon-Rogg calls on her to watch Marvel and Carol. The issue ends with tears in Una's eyes once more. Issue 10 of Captain Marvel quickly picks up where issue number 9 left off. Having rescued Carol Danvers once more, Marvel is rewarded with a warm and tender kiss. Up above, Una watches Marvel perform his Kree duty. She retains her professionalism, but still sheds a tear and reflects that she needs to face the fact that Marvel is involved with Carol Danvers. Yon-Rogg knows that his latest attack on Una's loyalties are finally working. Marvel is glad to be away and ready to return to the starship for a fresh uniform and to renew his air supply. Say what? Can you believe that? They hold on. They actually reference the fact that he needs to get those pills and needs those to breathe the air. Nice. Good to bring that up every now and again. Marvel notes upon returning to the ship that Yon-Rogg is being far too friendly. This is soon followed up by his being advised that they will be sitting in on a Visio call with Ronan the Accuser. Oddly, Ronan, who is mistakenly colored in as a pink-skinned Kree for this issue, is interested in the organization whom Dr. Lawson, Marvel's alter ego, was involved with, specifically their leader number 1, and the robot assassin. Ronan sees a group with this much power and financial backing having the potential to disrupt major global powers on Earth, and thus Marvel is ordered to drop all other activities and solely research this group. After his Visio call, Marvel runs across Una, who is visibly giving him the cold shoulder. Marvel is bold enough to ask what's up, and Una lets him know that a wink and a smile might be easier to find on his Earthwoman. All of this goes down right in front of Yon-Rogg, who is eating it up. At the organization, number 1 is lighting into number 23's failure to capture or kill Dr. Lawson, and he hands out the punishment of death for this failure. We're shown that the organization has either stolen or purchased an unknown number of devices from Dr. Lawson, and they are being tested on members of the organization. In this case, invention number 19, the Eon Ray, is tested on number 23. He's shot with a gun that ages him thousands of years within seconds. Number 1 insists that the Eon Ray be used to kill Dr. Lawson. At that moment, Dr. Lawson is being picked up by Carol Danvers for dinner. He's suspicious of her motivations, but she insists that they put the past behind them, except for one thing. She wants to know why the robot who kidnapped her came to his hotel room. Dr. Lawson dodges the question and pretends not to know the answer. It looks like it might be a relaxing evening, but another car has been following them. Members of the organization pull up beside Carol and Dr. Lawson. Carol recognizes the outfits, and Dr. Lawson recognizes a gun. He pulls both himself and Carol from the vehicle in an effort to avoid getting shot. Seconds later, the car is shot with a ray from the gun. Within seconds, it begins aging and falling apart. The ray appears to have an evolutionary effect on a nearby bird. The sight of a large pterodactyl leads to Carol bumping her head and passing out. This allows Dr. Lawson to change into Captain Marvel unobserved. While Marvel dispatches the dinosaur, the 2 members of the organization swoop in and kidnap the unconscious Carol Danvers. When Marvel returns to Carol to tell her why the cowardly Dr. Lawson had to flee the scene, those are his words, not mine, he discovers a note that gives him 12 hours for Dr. Lawson to appear at the headquarters of Consolidated Instruments Incorporated, or Carol Danvers will be killed. Instead of handing over Dr. Lawson, who is dead, Marvel hands over himself. The One seems more than happy to let Marvel represent Dr. Lawson for the time being. The next page comes as a surprise. The One's henchmen note that Marvel gave himself up without a fight. The One wants to know why, and Marvel admits that he could have crushed the One's guards like flies, but Marvel is here to strike an alliance. The One isn't convinced. He wants to know why his well-financed crime cartel should sign on with Marvel, to which Marvel points out the number of agents he, a single Kree soldier, was capable of taking out. Carol Danvers is brought out, and she's shocked that Marvel would strike a deal with such devils, but Marvel points out that she shouldn't believe in fairy tales and that a captive such as her would do better keeping her high moralizing opinions to herself. At this point, Carol is convinced that Marvel is a traitor and names him as an honorary member of the Judas Iscariot Marching Society. Wow, that is a really long and very specific insult. Marvel keeps berating Carol, but in the process sneaks a capsule of knockout gas to her so that she will be capable of getting away from the guards. As she's led away, the One is still anxious to meet up with Dr. Lawson. As the One and Marvel walk along, they appear to be getting chummy, and the One wants Marvel to finish the job of killing Dr. Lawson for him. Yeah, that should be a pretty easy reward to cash in on since Yon-Rogg already did it. At the moment, one of the lackeys runs up to inform the One that the girl used a gas capsule to escape. Marvel then immediately takes responsibility for some reason for allowing her to escape, and the One isn't surprised in the slightest. Marvel thinks he has the One alone, but the One quickly escapes and leaves his henchmen behind to finish Marvel off. After Marvel takes out about a half dozen or so henchmen, the One comes in from behind and hits Marvel with the Eon Ray, which immediately brings Marvel to his knees. Marvel begins to age at 10 years per second. The One laughs while his lackeys look on and make jokes about it. In a last-ditch effort, Marvel uses his U-beam to shatter the time barrier, and as an aged septuagenarian, he leaps forward and wrests the Eon Ray away from the One. Quickly, Marvel makes adjustments to the ray before turning it back on himself. By the time the henchmen catch up, Marvel is youngish once more. Marvel then brings down an entire tentacle of the organization by aging them all with the Eon Ray. Marvel and Carol fly away from the now aging and crumbling structure. Referring to this as a tentacle of the organization could actually mean that the organization is a part of Hydra. But this is the only evidence that we really have to back that up. Back on the ship, this is the moment Yon-Rogg has been waiting for. Instead of working with number 1, Marvel destroyed him. Yon-Rogg reports this transgression to Ronan the Accuser, who is still pink and looks weird, and sentences Captain Marvel to immediate execution. Una overhears the conversation between Ronan and Yon-Rogg and decides that despite being mad at Marvel, she still cares about him enough that she doesn't want to see him dead, and thus she needs to warn him about what's about to go down, if at all possible. And I love that writer Arnold Drake takes a moment to show the crew's reaction to Marvel's termination orders. The lieutenant can't believe this turn of events. The execution squad then loads up, homing in on Marvel's signal. Along the way, they spot Una seeking to warn Marvel, and they blast her hard enough to knock her out for the next few minutes. Una awakens a few minutes later, but the firing squad is already lined up to carry out their orders. The lieutenant doesn't want to carry out his orders, but Marvel strangely comforts him and reminds him that their every action is being monitored by Yon-Rogg. Una is rushing in, yelling for them to stop, while the lieutenant calls for full energy fire. And this is where we leave off, with Marvel's life on the line. In the next episode, I'll continue to follow Marvel through one of his oddest trials as I take a look at the Supremor Saga, where Marvel turns against his own people and worships the mighty Zo. This will lead us directly into the Kree Skrull War, and then preparations begin for the Thanos War. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.